Welcome to Leadership Traits Decoded. I'm Cynthia Kyriazis, Chief Experience Officer at the Culture Think Tank.
And I'm Drea Martin, Chief Operating Officer of the Crucible. We are collaborative partners at Performance Leadership Learning Lab, where we transform leadership intelligence into return-driven action.
Today, we're unpacking the leadership traits essential for building, investing in, and scaling successful companies. Our insights come directly from data-driven metrics within our platform's solution. So let's dive in.
Great. All right. How are you doing today, Cynthia?
I'm good, Andrea. I'm really happy because it's Friday. We have the weekend to look forward to, and we have some good weather coming.
Wonderful.
You know what? I was looking over our list, and we have a total of 7 areas, right? 6.
Yeah, a total of 6 areas.
We have a total of 6 areas, and 5 of them all have to do with the types of behaviors we've been talking about. But the 6th area is something we've only done a couple sessions on, so I think we do it today. The 6th session is called contaminants, which in and of itself makes you want to say, okay, what are those things that we need to be aware of?
Right.
We've talked about a lack of awareness, and we have talked about arrogance and how those 2 particular traits in that category, what they look like. I thought today we might talk about fear of failure, and you reframing it for us again from the beginning a little bit about contaminants.
Yeah,
Just in case
happily.
our audience hasn't heard the previous one. So fear of failure is what I thought we'd talk about today.
Great. Yeah. So to start us off, contaminants in themselves are when an individual's experiencing increased stress, pressure, things are changing rapidly. These are the traits that come to light in those situations. So when these are flagged, which means the individual's at risk for these traits, for example, fear of failure, as we'll be diving into that one, it means on the day-to-day, someone might not feel that that individual has fear of failure. But when those high pressure situations come, things start to change rapidly. This is the kind of trait that someone will fall into. And we call it a contaminant with the whole metallurgy theme. This notion of it's something in the pot that's making things not mix the way that they need to.
Okay, very good. All right. So what can you share with us about fear of failure? Because my initial reaction to that was that's probably something that we could consider common. I'm not sure, but it seems that I see that or hear it from others.
Yeah, so we define fear of failure as an elevated aversion to making mistakes. So everyone has a healthy amount of fear of failure because fear of failure in general just means in the society that we're raised in, like there's dynamics there where, of course, we don't want to be constantly making mistakes or constantly going through different failures. On the other hand, some people have higher levels, which then can derail their performance because they don't take risks because they're afraid of making mistakes, or they don't want to try things because they're afraid of making mistakes. And where I've seen this contaminant most frequently triggered is with more junior professionals. And that is simply a default of a lack of enough experience to tell them that failure is okay and part of life and means you're trying, and it's a totally healthy factor of any challenge that you're facing.
So this is what comes to mind. Yes, I would imagine that fear of failure is something that you would be seeing in junior or non-experienced individuals. But what happens if that trait shows itself in somebody who's a little bit more seasoned who is on the team? What does it do? How does it interact? How to handle it when it's a senior member that seems to be still having that issue?
Yeah, that's definitely a difficult one, and probably more difficult than the more common, just hasn't had enough experience to feel comfortable with failure yet, because it does mean that there have to be other things that mitigate that situation. What it typically means if somebody has fear of failure and what that looks like, especially if they're a more senior member of the team, is that they might not take the normal risks that they would in other situations when things get more heated, when there's more pressure. So decision making will slow down. They might take easier routes depending on what drives them. They're likely to choose a path that they feel more comfortable and confident in, even if that's not kind of their normal action, but one that they will do in this situation of increased stress.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. How would, let's say, the leader of an executive team or a senior team who has an individual that you just described, seasoned, does a very good job, but still has this particular trait, how would you help that individual's supervisor or even team member recognize and help them through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it depends a little bit on the individual. I'd say the biggest and the first piece is awareness. So it's understanding that this is something that exists, not only for that person and that individual's development planning, but then also for the senior leaders around this person to be able to push maybe and be able to kind of take over some of those bigger decision making needs at the times when decisions are, when you can see that person falling back on, let's do a more comfortable thing, or let's do this kind of tried and true path, thinking twice about that decision and adding an extra layer of kind of questioning and support in if you believe that that's just something that's a stress response compared to if it's the right thing or the best thing for the company to do at the time is a big piece. And then from a developmental standpoint, how do you work with this person so they can overcome some of this? Just like you would with more junior person, giving them more stretch tasks, giving them more opportunities to experience failure in little ways can be a really healthy way to continue to build up comfort. Especially because if somebody's going to choose the path they feel more comfortable with, the riskier the paths that they feel comfortable on, the less of an issue this will be.
So it's probably one of those traits that it's better to start early with an individual to kind of work them into it, because fear of failure is something that can come up for every decision
Right.
of a leader. And I also guess that it's accurate to say that putting pressure or trying to solve it for that person is not something that's going to work very well.
No. And that's the difficult part of, as much as you can have trusted mentors around this person in periods of increased stress who can push back and say, no, we should take this risk. This is going to be okay. And it's not a super tense situation, which it totally is just contrary to everything that person wants or triggers any other aspects. Another contaminant we haven't taken a deep dive into yet is fragility, which is kind of the ability to receive some of that feedback. So if this person just triggers fear of failure, but not fragility, that is an easier dynamic than if they also have the habit to get more fragile when situations are very stressful.
Okay, very interesting. So I guess we kind of have our topic for our next
I
session.
guess so. Yeah.
Our next session, we probably will do fragility. So, another contaminant that would be interesting to learn more about. Well, thanks so much for sharing all your knowledge, as always, with fear of failure. And I think you gave some great points and some great ways to move forward if this person is facing that and you still want to help them grow and get
Right.
to where they need to get to. Thanks so much, Drea, for all your knowledge. See you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Leadership Traits Decoded. You'll be able to find all our episodes on the Performance Leadership Learning Lab website at www.pll.lab.com, or you can listen on your favorite streaming platform.
We'll be back soon to explore the next essential trait. Until then, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn if you have any questions or ideas.